Our Torah portion today is Leviticus 12 and first part of 13, and it continues with the same theme that we've had. The theme is holiness. If you recall, last week, Leviticus 9 was the setting apart of the priests and the initiation of the daily sacrifice. Leviticus 10 was a command to Levi and Aaron to teach the people what was right, what was wrong, and the horrible incident with Nadab and Abihu. And then chapter 11 were the foods to eat and not eat. Now Leviticus 12 deals with ceremonial uncleanness after a woman has a baby, and then you go into Leviticus 13 and it deals with leprosy. And so what you find, if you've ever just sat down and read the book of Leviticus, the theme of Leviticus is holiness. And the theme is, these are the things that will make you unholy or defiled, and these are the things that will bring you into holiness. And what you start to see in this, a lot of it's hard to understand. I mean, it really is. I've heard all kinds of explanations. Some of it just seems to be pure sanitation, just good hygiene, particularly some of the things that the women are commanded and the lepers, and some of the things I have no idea. I have no idea why there was a 40-day period for a boy and an 80-day period for a girl. You can explain that to me? I don't know. The rabbis have all kinds of ideas. The rabbis see all this, the regulations concerning childbirth and the blood flow and all this is having to do with life. And that, of course, a girl in certain senses is more valued because she will have more life. And so they see the extra days as really a testament to the value of the girl and the value of... And it's interesting how when you look at old societies, many of them, women were really valued significantly less than men. In fact, in Sharia law today, a woman's testimony in court is exactly half the value of a man's. So that, and we've just seen this happen, a woman that is raped, it's her word against the man. There was a case just recently in Iran where they executed this girl because she shot and killed the guy that raped her. And interesting thing, I would say you cannot find in the Bible anything that values women less than men. It definitely makes distinctions. And when you look at holiness, distinction is a very important part of that. And one of the things that is a constant challenge in the culture we live in is the culture sees different lines than the Bible does. The Bible draws lines, and sometimes the culture says that's silly. And I think we all know, and I agree with this line, our culture really dislikes racism. But what's become interesting is that you can be an adulterer, an extortionist, you can be any number of things and people really don't care. But you're a racist, you're dead. My point is simply that's not biblical. The Bible doesn't draw lines where society does. And you have to be careful to ask, all right, God, where do you draw the lines? What makes us distinct? And we talked a little bit about this last time with the food. It's difficult when you live in a society that doesn't see food the way we do to stand up for what we think. But I think it's always important when you tell people why you eat what you do that it's based upon what God said. And leave it up to them. So often people do what their group does, which is really kind of the truth of all of us. I mean, think about it. If you went over to the center and we said, we're serving fried horny toad, it wouldn't matter what people thought about kosher laws. Most people would go, I guess I'm not eating today because that's disgusting. But we don't feel that way about some other things. Society doesn't, because we've elected to make them food. My point is, as you look at Leviticus, it's very important to say, all right, God, what does this mean to me? Because we quote, and it's quoted in the New Testament often, Be holy as I am holy. Guess what chapter that comes out of? The chapter on clean and unclean meat. And God's saying that I want you to separate yourself from certain things just as I am separate from certain things. And so I leave you with that as we're going to look at some other things that I think are more topical today, but they're also the same thing. One of the things that's become very apparent to me in this understanding of being thankful is that to be thankful means you can't be unthankful. And if you're going to gripe and complain, that means you refuse to be thankful. There's this mutual exclusion. And that's just like God says, don't eat pig. If you decide to eat pig, then you've decided something that is your choice over God's. You can't change that. That's your choice. It's one or the other. There's a lot of things that are not mutually exclusive. Some things are. And when you look at the clean and unclean foods, those are one of those things. You choose one or the other, and you really, people have different understandings. This concept of being thankful, or as I've talked to you, something that really has spoken to me is this world of connection and the world of estrangement. This place where you're angry, bitter, upset, or this place where you're loving and forgiving. You can't mix these two. If you choose to be unforgiving, you can't be loving. You can't. And this means we have choices. Coming to Thanksgiving, there's a writing that says, it's on gratitude. How many of you know how that writing starts? Everybody knows, don't you? Defile not the gift of gratitude, for in it are contained what? True righteousness. And I used to think that's kind of a large claim. And then I started to understand that an unthankful person has no room for God. And they have no room for other people. In the moment of my unthankfulness, who is on the throne and who is important? Me. They didn't fix it the way I like it. There's no salt. And in that moment, I draw to myself. Now, thankfully, we can go in and out. But to be unthankful or complaining puts me in this circle of myself. Greg, I think you put your hand up. That's right. 1 John 1.
And the equation was that, well, what if that fellowship is broken? What if there's a, chink in that chain of fellowship? Does that mean that the blood of Jesus then has no effect if that fellowship has been broken? And the answer to me was, yeah.
I think you're right.
So if you break that fellowship or decide that you don't want to deal with fellowship and come together, be careful, because then you're taking yourself outside of the protection of the blood of Jesus.
See, and that's a great way to put it, Greg, because it helps me see, because I need to be reminded sometimes that there's this place of connection, there's this place where I'm in the light and where I'm forgiven and I forgive, and if I choose not to be there, I'm out. In my head, I would like to think I can have both. If you notice, this is how we are as human beings. And what struck me, they do these studies on happiness. And sometimes they're kind of dumb, but they found something out about happiness. And guess what? It doesn't have much to do with your circumstances. You know how they examined this? I don't know about you, I've often thought, I'll be happy when? Anybody here ever? I'll be satisfied when? Well, guess what group of people they checked out to discover happiness? Lottery winners. How many of you, if you won $100 million, would be happy? Me? I think I laughed, though, in the house of Aaron. I seriously, if $10 million showed up on our doorstep, we could spend it effectively and it would be gone. A lot of good things would happen, but here's the thing, and I'm sure you instinctively know that. People who were unhappy before they won the lottery, it was a matter of months they were unhappy again. And people that were happy before, We're happy after. And so the researchers go, you know what? It might not be things. It may not be circumstances. What makes happy people? And guess what you found? Go ahead, Ann.
I have a quote that I found on my wall. It says, the primary cause of unhappiness is rarely the situation, but it's how you think of the situation. So be careful about how you see it.
Exactly. And that kind of bothers me because sometimes I feel like I have a right to be unhappy. This went bad, that went wrong. And then suddenly you realize, you know what? It's all how you choose to think. So, they've actually done surveys on different things because they started to say, well, if that's the truth, could we help unhappy people? Because, here, this is not just academic. Unhappy people do a lot of things that hurt people. Unhappy people do stupid things that really hurt people. And they hurt themselves. So they said, well, what can you do to boost happiness? And what's interesting, you always find out the scriptures were right in the first place, don't you? So, here's another thing I thought kind of broke my heart in a sense. They said, okay, how about life-altering things that really change quality of life? How does that impact people? And again, guess what they found out? Unhappy people that suffered an accident that caused them to be paralyzed were unhappy after. But the happy people, guess what? No matter what happened, they figured something out and they were happy again. And they said, we noticed, and I know they noticed that the writing is right. Don't defile the gift of gratitude. In it is righteousness. That when you cannot or lose the ability to be grateful, you lose the ability to love righteousness. And what's interesting, it's kind of like what Greg was saying. It's like you choose to live in darkness instead of the light. And so they said, well, if this is true, what can we do to help people? And this is something a rabbi said. He said, who is happy? One who is happy with their lot. And there's truth to that. And yet, I'm always grateful for people that are dissatisfied with things and change them for the better. So if you understand that being dissatisfied is not always bad. It's dissatisfaction that leads to complaining. Just help me with this. We have this day of Thanksgiving. And it's a wonderful day. You get together, you eat food, and it's interesting how important food is to most of us to be happy. I mean, I'm one of those people that, if you say we're going to have a good time but we're not going to eat, I think, well, we must not be going to have a good time. Because if we're going to have a good time, we're going to eat. But we make this decision to be thankful, and we share, and we have a good time, and there's bounty. But what can we do to allow our lives to be a constant pattern of happiness or thankfulness? Because if it is not my circumstance, because I don't know about you, I think about being paralyzed or something like that, and it seems like it would be the worst thing that ever happened. But it's not. The worst thing that can happen is to lose your faith. It's to lose God. So they said, they found one exercise when they were doing all these studies of people, where they kept finding what they call the happiness set point. Regardless of how good it was or how bad, people tended to return to what they were. They said, okay, we found one thing that makes a profound difference. It's by taking time out as little as once a week to stop and enumerate what they were thankful for in their lives. When people did that, now think about this, once a week? Now it's better more, but if you did it once a week, subjects were able to change their happiness set points and become happier permanently. And you know what I love about that? Because have you ever heard this? I can't help that I have a bad temper. My family has bad tempers. I can't help that I'm pessimistic. And of course, when you say that I can't help what I am, what are you really saying? I like how I am, and I'm strengthening myself in this. And I was reading this book by Bill Johnson. And Bill Johnson, if you've ever read any of his books, they're fantastic. But you find out he has one mantra. He wants to be in the presence of the Lord. He doesn't care how bad it is, how good. He wants to be in the presence of the Lord. Because he says it's there that he makes good decisions. He says, I make lousy decisions when I'm over here by myself. I go the wrong place, I do it. And so he talks of this story. Anybody that's ever read the life of David, it's incredible to think that David was anointed king of Israel. I mean, this would be kind of a high point and also frightening. But you realize what David went through for the next 22 years of his life after Samuel anointed him king of Israel? Right off the bat, the present king rejected him. Because of his victory in battle, he wins Michal, the son of Saul, and she turns against him. He goes into the desert, and he acquires a following of men, and you know what kind of people they are? They're the rejects of society. They're the people that owe money, that, for some reason they've been run off. I mean, he's got a group of people. He's the king of Israel, Samuel the prophet, but what he's got is a ragtag bunch of outlaws. And what's more, he's pretending to be an ally of the Philistines. And in all of this, David never loses who God is. And one time, the Philistines tried to get them to fight with them, and David would have done, I don't know what he would have done to go against Israel. But as they were getting ready to go, some of the generals said, you know what, we don't trust him. We don't dare let him go with us. So they pushed them off, and so David and his men went back to their little town of Ziklag. You remember what they found? The Amalekites, or Amorites maybe, I don't remember, Semite, came in there and burned down their village and took all their wives and their kids. So here's David. He's rejected by everybody. He comes back and finds his family, everybody's gone, and so now you know what his men do? They turn on him and say, we should kill you. You can't even take care of us. And it suddenly hit me, when you string it all together, how I would have responded to this. And you know what this Bible says David did? It says he strengthened himself in the Lord. And I'm like, what? He says he strengthened himself in the Lord. Then he went to his men and said, men, we're good. Let's go get our family and wives back. Something in David's spirit, his men gathered around and he went out and got them back. And I'm like, how do you strengthen yourself in the Lord? You be grateful. How many scriptures say that? What's your strength? The joy of the Lord. And it's interesting how it's all there, and yet sometimes we turn it into this something you can't grasp. It's fleeting, and it's right here. This person that wrote this article on being thankful, she lists 5 things you can do to increase gratitude. And really what she's done here, she just borrows from Scripture. And I think it's interesting what I mentioned to you before, that when they did this research, that even taking it one day a week and saying what you're thankful for makes a difference in your life. What if this became a part of your life? How many of you would agree it was part of David's life? Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that's within me. Bless his holy name. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Where does that come from? This comes from a man that when the enemy's snapping at his heels, he starts praising God and starts saying what he's thankful for. And what's interesting is he's the picture of the Messiah. Yeshua, Jesus, is the son of David. Number 1, brainstorm what you're thankful for. Have you ever had a time when you think, I've got nothing to be thankful for? What's interesting is I feel like that sometimes, and you know when I feel like that? When I've just been complaining about something. Or if I confront a negative situation and it consumes me. So remember what Paul says? The weapons of our warfare aren't what? They're not carnal. They're not of the flesh, but they're mighty to the pulling down of strongholds. What kind of strongholds is he talking about? Thoughts. Remember? Because he says, we're ready to take what captive? Every thought. And I thought, well, you know what? That means that those negative thoughts that I have, see, it's not that something is wrong, because things go wrong. It's not negative to say, I've cut my foot. No, I cut my foot. And I need to get, taken care of. Complaining is, I've cut my foot. Now I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to, it's giving into something that paints the world black. And realize you're over there in that one, or you're here in the thankful place. So brainstorm what you're thankful for. In one study, Professor, I cannot say her name, Sonia Lyubomirsky of the University of California, subjects who had a conversation about things they were grateful for recorded a greater sense of happiness and well-being, and this effect lasted for months. So this is what blows me away as I'm looking at this, is if you're making a practice of being thankful every day, you're going to change your life. You're going to change how you interact with people. And what's interesting is being thankful gives us the energy to attack our problems, where complaining saps us of any will to do anything. Whatever it is, what we're struggling with, being grateful actually strengthens us to conquer it. Greg. Now, it's really quite interesting when you think about it, that those scriptures, and like you say, the power they have in our lives, we empower those scriptures in our lives when we adopt an attitude of thanksgiving and praise. They become real. And the thing that's amazing to me, like I mentioned, I just read that book, Night, by Elie Wiesel, and it was hard for me. The Holocaust really bothers me on a lot of levels. I think the thing that bothers me about the Holocaust more than any other thing are the millions of people that stood by and watched it happen. That scares me. How could that happen? And yet, what I realized, there are people that went through this unbelievable torment. And let's be honest, over 6 million Jews died. Millions of Christians died. If you haven't read the story of Maximilian Kolbe, you need to read it. The priest who gave his life so that a young Jewish man wouldn't have to. And the way they executed him at this particular camp was they'd put him what they called the hole, and they just put him down there without food and water till they died. They put a group of them in there, and they'd just wait for them to turn into cannibals, clawing and scratching each other, and I won't even say how horrible the things people did to try to get food and water. And when they did this to him and put him down there with these other 10 or 12 men, none of that happened. They went down there, and the men were in the hole singing hymns. No one ever hurt anyone else, nothing, and he lasted the longest. They finally had to come and execute him. He'd lived I don't know how many days. But I was impacted by, no matter what they did to him, Jesus was real to him. And he was his Savior. And his testimony just blows me away. Because he actually gave his life for someone else and was happy about it. The only way that happens is when we live in this realm of thankfulness. Something else they mention here, I see us. Brainstorm what you're thankful for. Actually make a practice. This is what I'm starting to realize for me. I probably need to write it down. I don't know, but some of you will just think of it and you'll remember. But I'm suggesting write it down. The next thing is keep a gratitude journal. Write down the good things that happen every day. Write down the good things that happen through the week. Because one of the things you'll notice about human nature is that we tend to attach to what's negative. I'm betting that if I ask you to name the 5 most embarrassing moments in your life, most of you can remember. Because that is just acute agony. But how many of you can remember the 5 happiest moments? See, I've got draw a blank because literally there's thousands. I'm hoping that's the problem. But you have to realize our human nature, it's a proactive, intentional thing to be grateful. It's a wonderful thing with benefits. But it's like exercise. You do not get exercise hoping. I keep telling Joy, honey, all that study you do and all this stuff, find a pill I can take. I want to get up and take a pill. Running a half hour is boring. Doing push-ups is boring. What gets you fit? A pill? It's doing it. That's the same thing here. It's being grateful. They did this study. They asked subjects to write 5 things they were thankful for each week. Those who kept gratitude journals reported being more satisfied with their lives. They reported feeling more optimistic about the upcoming week. They felt more connected with others and had more energy than members of a control group who did not keep journals. They reported fewer sick days, and they had higher levels of exercise. That's awful. Not really. But what is that saying? That's saying that by being grateful and thankful, it actually energizes us to get the things done we need to. Write a thank you letter. And I've noticed in my own life that this is a very helpful thing to do. You don't realize, I've written a few notes through time to tell people, but in my own life I can remember, I've told you before, one time at Christmas I got a Christmas card. I don't get many Christmas cards, and I looked at the address, who is this? Never heard of these people. So I opened the card, and there's this picture of this darling dog folding its front legs and looking at me. Then I found out there's a couple up here at the Wheeler Peak campground. They'd gone to pull out of their campsite, and they didn't realize the little dog was there, and it flipped under, and it abraded, took all the skin and hide off the dorsal part of its paws. I mean, it was a mess. They brought it over here. There's not much I could do. I just washed it out, cleaned it out. I don't think there's even anything to stitch, and put it on antibiotics, and just said, boy, I can't remember her name, the dog. I have a lot of feeling for people's pets. I mean, it's something you feel for the, because you see the people, you know. And anyway, I forgot about it. But they, you know, I thought, what a gift they gave me, because I didn't remember that. I mean, as a vet, you do this once in a while, and you have those that go bad. But to think of me enough to send me a Christmas card and say, look how well she's doing, really was a powerful thing for me. And so I realize if you send somebody a thank you note, do something, you'd be amazed. You think, oh, they won't really notice. Yes, if you remember something they did that blessed you, give them a note, give them a little card, right? It will make a huge impact on their lives. I can tell you from personal experience. I've had this happen several times, and it just takes your breath away. Here's one that is important for all of us. Give yourself time to change. That's what I like about the wristband. Don't complain, don't blame. So you fall, put it on the other wrist. You know, the chances are, I don't know if you're ever going to go 3 weeks. But just the wristband helps. But, you know, give yourself time to change. It takes a while. But the thing I love is you can be different. And remember what it says in Hebrews about the discipline of righteousness? It says, no discipline at the time, how does it put that, is joyous? Whatever it says, nobody likes discipline at the time. But it says it reaps this harvest of righteousness And a discipline of being grateful and thankful is going to do this for us. And then finally, what she says, we all know. Turn to God. And this is one of the things they found when they look at gratitude and thankfulness. It's almost always connected with people's connection to God. Because they realize the beauty they see, the people they have in their lives, the wonderful things all did come from God. And this is what makes all the difference. I see it's 11:30, so if you'll turn to 496, excuse me. No one ever cared for me like Jesus. It's 496, and let's all stand and we'll sing our closing song.